Welcome to the new Forest Business Podcast. I'm your host, John Carpenter. Spend time with me as I get to know the entrepreneurs and business owners in and around the New Forest. You'll discover their stories, business tips, and much more. Today, I am joined by Flora Richardson, founder of the Forest Foodie. If you have ever been to an event run in the New Forest, chances are high that it was catered by Flora and her team. Sourcing the finest ingredients from around the forest, catering for large events, parties, to even dining at home for a small group of you. So, discover what it's like running a business in a competitive market, how she goes about sourcing only the best ingredients, and how to make sure everything comes together just right, and much more. So, Flora, welcome to the New Forest Business Podcast.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. So, Flora, take us back to the beginning. Just how did the Forest Foodie come to be?
Of course. So I started the business in lockdown, actually, in 2020. So this is our 5th year of running. I actually was running a business before that within the travel sector, and COVID hit. So obviously the worst business to be in the time was the travel industry. So I had nothing to do, nothing to lose. And it was the only time I thought, right, let's go and completely pursue what I'm really genuinely love and I'm very, very passionate about, which is good food and good wine. And thought at that time in particular, I don't know if you remember the queues at butchers and greengrocers, etc. And people suddenly really decided for the first time in their life they wanted to go and support local businesses. So I thought there's a gap in the market. How can I support lots of local producers and sort of bring their amazing produce together and make it more accessible to people living locally, and then hopefully in time, as lockdown lifted, to people visiting, because obviously there's a huge amount of people visiting our amazing place, the New Forest.
Yeah.
So I genuinely thought it might keep me busy 1 or 2 days a week throughout lockdown, and it grew and grew, and turns out there was a huge demand for it, and surprised myself a lot. And yeah, it grew and kept me busy 7 days a week. Grew into a big commercial kitchen just down the road from my house in Lymington. And that's where it all began. But just genuinely, it was an amazing experience getting to know, discovering so many farmers, cheese makers, wine makers, small growers, to just all sorts of sort of artisan producers. So I think we now work with over 40 different suppliers.
Yeah. Talk to me about that sourcing, process then. Because you're covering a vast area, like you mentioned. There's numerous farms, suppliers, places to go to get great seafood. So, how did you start that whole process? From nothing. It's very well for someone to have an interest in food and like good produce, but it's another thing actually to find the right produce to supply to people and finding the best that's around, and also building those connections with suppliers. Talk me through that process, how that was.
Sure. So I guess there's 2 elements. You could just work with local producers, but for me, it's got to be 2 things. It's got to be local. I've got to understand their story and sort of their why, but also it's got to taste really good as well. Just because something's local doesn't necessarily mean it's amazing. And my sort of purpose was to try and tell their story as well. So I would literally jump in the car or jump on the phone or on a Zoom call. Sort of early days, we weren't allowed to do much, but as lockdown lifted and you were able to go and see suppliers, I would go and meet them. I'd go up see Mike Smells at Lyburn Cheese in the north of the forest, for example, go and have a chat with him. And he would show me his cows. He would show me tanks that they get the milk from, and then all around their sort of cheese making. Actually sounds quite grand, but all around sort of what they do there. I would go and spend time with a local chocolatier and actually finding out where they source that from and how they work. I will have quite a difficult job actually for me is most years I get invited up to Brook Hill in Bramshire. Really lovely couple, Ian and Amanda, and they grow their own vines, but they actually make their own wine there as well, which is unusual. But they will invite me to go and taste and give opinions on their New Year's harvest essentially. So try the sparkling and the whites and the rosé. Sometimes they have a red or a sparkling red. So I just truly immerse myself into, with these companies, and so I can fully understand them and tell that story to people. Another example is maybe where we source our meat from. So probably a challenge which comes with what I do and how I run the business is not only with sourcing local produce and very good produce as well. It's expensive. So therefore, I feel like you have to tell the story so people will sort of see the value and understand why it is slightly more expensive. So the beef that we source, a lot of it comes from commoners who farm the land. When you see lots of ponies and cows, locals but other people might not. Roaming around the New Forest, they're actually serving a purpose. So they're farming the land. Otherwise, you need loads of tractors and combine harvesters, etc. But just finding out, like even something really simple, what they do with their hooves on the land. So they'll make little holes where rainwater will go into the holes, and then loads of rare flowers spring from. And without that just wouldn't happen. So it's pretty interesting. And so these cows have an amazing life, but then also in terms of incredible meat. And same with things like panage pork, when commoners turn out their pigs onto the forest to eat the acorns and beech moss and nuts, which are poisonous for the ponies and the cows. So again, it's not just, breeding just for meat, it's breeding for a purpose and keeping the whole sort of circular economy of the New Forest alive. So yeah, and then I sort of try and tell that story. So I'm interested.
I think that's so important. For a lot of people, particularly you mentioned when food might be more expensive than what they may be used to actually have that story behind it, understand where it's coming from, understanding, the quality. I can vouch for the quality of produce that, that you provide. It is fantastic, but it does really help to have, to have that story behind, to help people understand it and buy into it for you. So when you started, you were around COVID and, trying to get these great supplies to people. How did you start getting businesses involved or coming to you for wanting catering events and, and growing that kind of side of your business? Because I guess it's very, not straightforward, but maybe a lot more simpler to start with supplying to a few people to suddenly then having to do a huge role catering. How was that for you? And how did you actually find, those opportunities?
So my background for a long time was recruitment. So I was used to picking up the phone and calling up people and effectively selling. So that's what I would do a lot. For if it was businesses and events and things like that. But initially it was more aimed at locals rather than the corporate side of things. So picnic campers, etc. And a lot of that was through social media, and then in turn word of mouth. Those are pretty much our main avenues for marketing. And then we've got about nearly 70% repeat business now, which is amazing. I'm really pleased with that. But the corporate side, and answer your question, I didn't know, I had no idea until I started the Forest Foodie, how much of an incredible network of local businesses and groups that you could be part of with people who genuinely wanted to help you from all elements. So it can be pretty daunting, pretty lonely, starting your own business. You haven't got a team of colleagues, bounce ideas off and, or even just have a laugh with or celebration with, or something hasn't gone so well with, to share that. Turns out there is an amazing community, which has been great. And I think from that, because people are genuinely in it to help each other out, it's kind of grown a bit organically. For example, with New Forest Business Partnership or Leamington Chamber of Commerce or New Forest Mark, Hampshire Fair, whatever it might be, people just are then to help each other out, which has been amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a great community of local businesses within the area. It's great that they can come together and support each other. So you found, obviously, you've got your great produce in. How do you go actually about I'm interested to know how you go about setting menus, or when you're catering for events, actually, how you decide what you can offer. Is that purely seasonal, or how
So
do you
it
go about
varies.
that?
So picnics, which are we offer every single year round, but our seasons tend to be sort of May to end of September for picnics. Um, and then in the winter months, it's more some dinner parties, dine at home, canapes, big Christmas hampers. We'll do a full Christmas feast. So we people collect on Christmas Eve, and that menu is obviously specifically Christmas themed. So we, again, everything we do is centered around local producers. So, for example, our Christmas menu, it's working with local New Forest beef for the beef Wellington, New Forest mushrooms for the duck cell. We'll work with Liburn cheese to make the cheese sauce for the cauliflower cheese. We'll work with, local people that make charcuterie for that pancetta to wrap the chipolatas in, etc. So it's kind of what do we want to do, but also linking that in with local suppliers. So that's Christmas. Picnics, we have 9 picnics that we offer, and they're set. And that they don't vary a huge amount unless we always say the nature of fishing, for example, if it's spring tides or really bad weather and the fishermen can't go out or their boat breaks, for example, we only get lobster and crab, which are caught from around the back of the Isle of Wight. We don't go and get some from M&S from Canada or something like that. And then the more canapes, again, they're centered around, okay, what's local, what's tasty, what really works, and they're sort of fairly fixed or, year round. That tends to work well. And then more bespoke menus, which we're doing a lot more of now. So corporate events or birthday parties, 50th, 60th, 80th, 90th, christenings, funeral wakes and stuff like that. I'll just make it as bespoke as possible. I'll always have a chat with them and talk about what they love or hate, and, what kind of vibe they're after. Because what we can offer does vary a lot from, sandwiches, Scotch egg sausage rolls
Yeah.
to flipped beef, lobster rolls, etc. So, tailoring it completely. So it's very bespoke service rather than menus A, B, and C. But again, at the same time, kind of educating them, actually don't do salmon because, that's just uh, uh, not a good product to be using. And there's a lot in the news about that. But as an alternative, we work with chalk stream trout, which is exceptional, amazing quality, and also local, which a lot of people haven't heard of. So yeah, it's kind of just reminding them actually we do this, and yeah, and then we'll tailor to the seasons as well. So when New Forest fruit, who predominantly grow strawberries, sometimes a little bit of raspberries and blueberries, and then for a very short season, asparagus as well. So and they actually have a season earlier than anywhere else in the UK. So yeah, so a bit with the seasons, but as long as it's centered around local producers and what we can get hold of.
Sounds like what you a little bit from what you just said that actually, before we move on, is food being sourced ethically, and that sounds quite important. You touched on salmon not using that, but obviously you want your food to come from, to be ethically sourced, and the animals to be looked after, etc. That's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. And again, I think as, if I can actually tell you, okay, this beef is from this farm and this is how it's been reared, etc. Or the Panish pork, the story behind that and what an amazing life they've had. And, even to sort of, when how they're slaughtered and stuff like that is the farmers that we work with, that's hugely important to them. Which, being able to honestly say that it's done in a really ethical way is the best we can get. And I think where people are, it is really tough at the moment with cost of living and, the cost of everything going up and the cost of our ingredients going up as well. And it's, a balance. We can't just keep upping our prices for our customers as well. But, where people are just focused on price, um, something got to be compromised. So I can't go to my local butchers or farmers who might only have 20 cows. Say, right, it's as cheap as you could possibly get me filleted beef for. Because what's going to be compromised? They only have 20 cows. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
So it's, I pay a rate which they need to sell their beef at, and then I will make my margin on top so that there's no sort of squeezing for anybody. Um, and again, having come from a recruitment and sales background, previous to that, it's all about sort of negotiating. It's quite a different sort of moral stance in a way to do that. But it's okay. What do you need to sell your product for, and I'll buy it for that price. So it's fair.
Yeah, exactly. It's another good thing for you and the people that work with you, the businesses, or mention NFBP, etc. It's good for them, and it's good for the suppliers and everyone else involved. Now, I'm really intrigued because catering is competitive. Wherever you are in the country, you're never going to be just the only caterer. There are going to be options, but you have made a really successful business. You're always busy. You emailed me late yesterday to postpone the recording of this because you had a request come in to supply business. But you've done it. How did you do it? How did you make a success of your business? Because, did you have experience before of actually any business acumen, or, how did you, because that is the main thing for anyone starting a business or listening. A lot of them will wonder, okay, but how did you actually make a success of it? What did set you apart? Could you give me any insight into actually how you you are?
A lot of learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough, and I would still say it's still tough. Running a food business with high end produce with high costs. It's that it definitely doesn't bring in the big salaries like the corporate world. But the main thing for me is doing what you love, which I think comes across, and people really buy into that. But I've constantly been learning. So no, I hadn't really run a business before. To be honest, I didn't know how to work out margins and things like that. I've never really, been on my radar. I had targets, my previous life in the commercial world in London, and I'd hit those targets, and that didn't mean a huge amount to me other than my pay packet. Whereas actually it was breaking that down. I could sell and I could cook, and I know how to look after customers. And that was about it. And then suddenly, um, you know, building a website, managing a website, social media, you'll enjoy this, the VAT side, Sage, payroll, all of that side of things, which was a completely new area for me. You just have to do it, and you just have to learn. And it definitely has helped, slash sometimes been a bit annoying, being married to a finance man. So yeah, he's been sort of quite hot on, okay, every month stock take, where are we up to, what's your target margin and where are you actually at? Sometimes I thought things are going really well at the beginning, and actually we look at them and it's, they really weren't. So we need to make changes and adapt. And on the subject of adapting, I think that's been another thing. So constantly adapting to what my customers might be after. So initially started adapting in lockdown, when we were free, and then we were back into a lockdown, no takeaways were open. And that's where we launched the dine at home side of things, delivering dinner party food that was beef Wellingtons and rats of lamb, which actually proved to be really successful. I never did anything too ballsy too early until I was really confident with what we were doing, because reputation and making sure that everything is absolutely to the highest quality that I was 100% satisfied with. So it's a bit of a confidence thing. Definitely 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made canapes for 200 people. And now I wouldn't bat an eyelid at doing that. So sort of grown cautiously without taking too many risks seems to have worked well. And yeah, listening to, really asking for feedback a lot from our customers. Honest feedback has been really useful, what people have loved, or, what's working well. That's kind of been the main thing, I guess. But yeah, constantly learning, and the start of new seasons, what are we going to do differently? And I think probably another thing where I've had to adapt recently I had a baby last year, and having previously been available to work 7 days a week, any hour of the day, that's not possible anymore. So again, it's just changing up. Well, how can I make the best of the time that I have available where I'm not looking after my daughter, and also enjoying family time, because running a business on your own is, if you devote everything to that, then what's the point? It's really super important to me to enjoy time with my family and my daughter as well. So it's kind of being strict with yourself, saying no to stuff, which again, in business is, when you're turning down businesses is also really hard. Um, but just reining it in, keeping focused, and making sure that what you are doing is making money and that it is what people want.
Fab. And some great tips in there. We'll come on to business tips shortly. But for anyone listening, there's some real great insight there from you, which I really appreciate. And you're right, you've got to give your family time when you're running a business. It's so easy to become, every day devoting yourself to the business and kind of forgetting about yourself and family. It's very easy to lose sight of what's really important, and you mustn't lose sight of what's important. So I've attended events where you catered for 200 people, and like I mentioned to you before recording, you and your team are always really busy, making sure everyone's getting the food and everything, going well. What's that actually like, organizing, catering for a big event? I imagine obviously it's a lot easier now than it was when you started.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of people to feed in a short period of time. It's a lot of food to get out in a short period of time. So yeah, what's that actual process like?
So there's a lot of time involved, not just in the making of the food, but actually in the planning element.
Mhm.
And I think, to be completely honest, that's something that I just didn't really notice, or didn't maybe took for granted before I had my daughter, because say if my busiest days, for example, are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so in my head, I wasn't doing huge amounts on Monday, Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday. But actually, when it comes down to it, there is so much. I don't sort of turn up to work on a Thursday. We're currently around open Thursday, Sunday. And I don't turn up to work on Thursday and everything's ready to go. It turns out that it is a huge amount of planning, spreadsheets, and shopping lists, suppliers lists, all of that, invoicing, dietary requirements, and all of that. So I basically live with spreadsheets. They are my Bible. And I will literally, this Sunday night, every single week, Monday to Sunday, what I'm going to do, when, how long it's going to take me, and plan my week meticulously. So for big events, it's um, what uh, what stock I need to get in, when, what packaging I'm going to use, how many of each I'm going to do, going to use, etc. And then dietary requirements to then what time I can start each element, because especially with canapes, for example, their shelf life, not they sit on the shelf, but you know what I mean. They need to be eaten fairly quickly. So again, you don't want soggy canapes. So that's balance as well.
Can imagine. But like I said, I could vouch for the quality of produce, and you and your team do a fantastic job. Um, and I've not seen any issues with anything. There's any issues behind the scenes, which I don't know, but it never looks that case on the surface. So that's always good. Now before we move on to a business tip, just I was on your website, and you sell hampers, which may be more of a Christmas thing, because at the moment they're all sold out. So maybe that's more of a. But you do diversify what you offer. It's not just catering for parties or events. And you touched on it earlier. Has that been a plan for you since? And I know you mentioned about you didn't want to do something before you were really confident in. You had a really good grounding of what you do, but I guess once you had that grounding, did you realize early on that actually you need to offer different aspects to your business to grow, to be successful, to stand out? Or has that happened organically?
So you're right with the gift hampers. So hampers with non-perishable goods in proper wicker hampers. That's our only product that we send UK wide. And pretty much 99% of that is around Christmas time. And the reason that we launched that, so we launched that about 6 months after I started the business, because we're seeing that people would. So I have a big passion for supporting the circular economy of the New Forest. So there's, the likes of Go New Forest and New Forest UK tourist board, essentially, and loads of other businesses which encourage people to come to the New Forest, which is great. But how can we encourage them to come here, spend here, keep the money, support local producers to keep that money in the circular economy? So one of my thoughts was, okay, we've got people coming and we've got loads of people coming to luckily enjoy the food that we produce, whether that be in a dinner party delivery to their holiday home or, a picnic out on a yacht charter or whatever it might be. We then tell the story of these, of where stuff is. I actually hand you a map of the New Forest and surrounding areas, which actually is a visual picture of where all of our suppliers come from, because I think, just to be accountable and show actually these are all our producers and this is where we get them from. And, even from sort of a hand-drawn boat with the, the license number of the boat is actually, the actual boat that goes out to collect to fish the seafood. So I can't remember where we were going with this. What was the question again?
The question was just about diversification, whether,
Yeah, so the gift hampers, sorry, I had to cut that bit. So yeah, where people are coming, enjoying the produce, they're bought into it, they're really enjoying it. And then they go back home, a lot of them to London or wherever it might be. And then that's it. They can't then get our produce really again until they come back. So the idea was it's another touch point of actually, when they go back to London, comes to Christmas time, lots of people have a real affinity with, I love the New Forest or Leamington or, that sort of thing. And they could still get a taste of the New Forest and send it to their friends and grandparents, their parents, or whoever it might be around Christmas time. So that's why we launched that element. And it was also another reason or another way of supporting producers on more of a year-round basis. So not just in the summer, but for example, the garlic farm on the Isle of Wight, we use a lot of their garlic mayo, which pairs amazingly with lobster and crab, etc. But they also have a huge range of other produce as well, all sorts of sauces and condiments and olives and things like that, and oils. We can't work with those products the rest of the year necessarily, but actually at Christmas, when we're not selling so many lobster picnics, funnily enough, actually let's get people who've tried their products to pair up with that side of things. So it was an element of changing with the seasons, but also supporting producers with the seasons.
I would highly recommend anyone to check those hampers out when they come available again, because the produce is it's fantastic with what's supplied in them. So hopefully they will come back and be available in the future. I think in the future, already in July. So it's not.
In September we start to plan again.
Yeah, it's not far away.
Yeah, and then try out new products, and there's constantly new producers that pop up and trying their products and then photographing them all. And that's another thing of being a small business. Suddenly I'm a photographer and website upload. So that's why we can't necessarily do everything all year round. And that's why that's for Christmas. But yeah, that's kind of how it works.
You're a wine taster as well. Perks of the job.
Yeah.
But I imagine as well, because you've established this business, people will come, new suppliers will check you out and come to you and say, do you fancy trying this out? And, would you use it moving forward? That's a credit to you that you've got yourself into that position where actually, now suppliers can come to you rather than you having to go to them, and
Definitely. Yeah, it's really nice actually.
So since you started, Laura, what would be your, in all that time you've been going, what would be your main business tips that that you've picked up along the way that you would give to anyone listening?
Top tips if you would set up a business. I think in the New Forest, for example, absolutely get involved in. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's been really it's been incredibly valuable. Is the networking side of things and being part of these communities, because it is just so supportive. So 100% do that. I would also say you never, I think sometimes an expectation to think, oh, you run your own business, you must sort of know how to do everything, and just be completely honest and humble and hold your hands up, be like, I don't know what that means, or how do I do that? And I think people appreciate that. If someone asks you a question, you don't know the answer, there'll be people who can help you, but they don't expect you to know everything. And I think that's been really nice, just sort of holding your hands up and asking for help. And there's an amazing network as well. And the other thing I think is maybe easy said than done, but just to love what you do. I think that's just so important. I would say that to any of my friends, family, anyone. I think it's so important to really, really enjoy what you do. And if you don't love doing it, don't do it. There's elements of running the Forest Foodie where I just really didn't enjoy doing something. So I just stopped and changed. And what do I love doing? Even within, I really don't like cooking those. So I just don't cook them anymore and, do things that I really love. So purely because I think life's too short. But also I think your customers know when you love what you do because they will hear it, they will see it, and they will appreciate it, and they will tell somebody else if they've had an amazing experience. And that amazing experience comes from somebody that's passionate, that's put a lot of love and energy and time into it. So, no matter what industry it is that you're working in, I think, if it's possible, enjoy the content of what you do.
Absolutely. You can't, I don't think you can run a business if you don't love what you're doing for that business. I just think otherwise it's just an awful lot of hard work. And I'm not getting anything really back. So I couldn't agree more. You have to love, what you're doing. So since you started, what about hurdles? What have been the main hurdles that you've had to overcome?
Um, They have probably been, so much learning. I'd never used payroll before. I had never knew much about VAT and how to do VAT returns, what to charge VAT on and what not to, which is a bit of a grey area with food, whether it's hot, whether it's cold. Obviously, lobster being a takeaway food, is it luxury? Is it not? In Leamington, maybe it's not. It's just the standard takeaway food. So there's been a huge amount of learning there. In terms of obstacles, it's probably been a sort of the cost side of things. So the increase in costs constantly. How do you manage that? How much can you pass on to your customers, or how much do you have to adapt actually what you're offering to make sure that the price point is still accessible to as wide an audience as possible um, within your sort of audience range, if that makes sense. Um, even one of those examples would be the packaging that we use. So, we use compostable packaging. The cost of that versus recyclable plastic, for example, it's about 4 or 5 times the amount. But it's making sure that what we are using is still true to our values, and not just all about cost. The cost of the boxes that we deliver our hampers in that are lined with natural sheep's wool and with reusable ice packs and things like that, they cost us between £8 and £13 per box, which is a lot of money, but it looks smart. It goes with our brand. It's reusable. There's so many different uses that you can use with the sheep's wool, or we can collect it, etc. So yeah, it's kind of staying true to values, but when costs come into it, that can definitely be hard.
Yeah, definitely. But it's it is a key point for businesses like yours, where you don't want to pass it on to the customer, but you also don't want to cut the quality of any part of the operation. So me, when I'm at an event and I'm eating your food, I'm not thinking about how it's got to the event, because I'm eating, but if you didn't have put that care and attention right at the beginning of how you transport it to an event, something else may fall down the line. You might, drop your standards at a different point in the process, and all of a sudden that can have a chain reaction. So it is massively important for businesses out there that you have a high standard in terms of equipment you use, services you provide, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, sometimes you might have to pay a little bit more, but you know that's okay.
exactly.
Sometimes, as long as you're making something at the end of it, okay,
Yeah,
we'll make sure that you make something out of your business. Um, but yeah, that's so important, so important. And I think that it can be easily overlooked. It's so easy to look at shortcuts, find ways to cut back, and it won't matter. No one will notice. But actually, as soon as you start doing that, then it's very easy to keep going, and all of a sudden, people will notice.
exactly. And I think if when people do notice, if somebody has a bad experience, they'll talk about it. It spreads like wildfire. And, that's what every single, the care that I put into every single element from the first phone call to actually hand delivering it myself is it just kind of showing actually the continuity and actually the care that goes into it. It is super important. And if you can't do that, then for me, I wouldn't do it.
Absolutely. So, we talked about obstacles, but what about highlights? What have been the main highlights for you since you started?
Um, I would say, I think when we went to our first awards, it's back in 2021, New Forest Business Awards at Barmer Lawn, and we were up for an award for the food and drink award for that year, 2021. Um, Huge expectations, but I was just absolutely over the moon to be a finalist. Nearly cried when that email came through, and then we won that award, which was just absolutely incredible. And then somehow at the end of all of the awards, they announced the New Forest Business of the Year, which they selected the Forest Foodie, which was just mind blowing. It really was. It was just absolutely incredible that, there's so many hundreds and hundreds of incredible businesses, and somehow they picked the Forest Foodie to be the Business of the Year, which just was incredible, pretty emotional. When you kind of think, well, I'm only such a small business, and do people really believe? I think there was a lot of businesses that set up in lockdown and, were sort of labeled almost as a lockdown business, have a bit of fun, make some brownies, and that's what you do. And it was like the first time I felt like we'd been really taken seriously and people could see, how much we'd put into this. And actually this was a business which, you know, we'd grown, and it was just that recognition was amazing. And then really sort of spurred us on to take it to the next level, which we did. And I think we've won 7 awards since then, but in total, including those 2. So that was mega. That was very cool. And the other highlight, to be honest, was probably being able to really make the business still work, having had a baby, which was fairly terrifying thought, of how I was going to make that work. What were my customers going to think? I actually closed the business for a few months because couldn't find the right sort of people to carry it on during that time, and actually thought reputation was everything, and actually it's okay just to take a pause. Did a lot of communication to my customers, and the feedback that I got from them was really genuinely amazing. And it was absolutely, we'll be here. Please take a break. Don't rush back. Um, I still, to be fair, had quite a few orders that we carried on throughout, from when my daughter was 3 weeks old. Quite a few were booked in before I was pregnant, which was fine. Carried through with a few of those, which helped because we still had the bills to pay at the unit, etc. But then, yeah, thinking what's going to happen? Is somebody going to go and take on what we do, sort of in another capacity, when you spent so long building up a brand, and then to sort of be off the market for a while was quite terrifying. But you just have to weigh up what's important to you at that time. And then coming back, having no idea what people, whether they'd forgotten about us, whether people still wanted what we offer. and also not being available 7 days a week. How is that going to work? Was it still doable? Can we still afford to to make the business work? And we have, and which I'm absolutely thrilled to say, and very proud of it, to be fair as well. So many loyal customers, and it's a juggle. It's definitely been a real test, but I think if you put your mind to it, you can make it work. But being really strict to make sure that it's still a good balance of having family time as well.
Which is again so important. And it's really interesting you mentioned about reputation, looking to possibly get someone in to cover you whilst you're with your baby, but actually it's far more important to, like you said, to take that break rather than bringing someone in who might have not been able to maintain their standards. That's far more important.
Mm-hmm. And I think you still end up managing, you still end up working because you're worried what's going out, what's social media, what, or if they turn around and don't like it, or, it was a huge pressure. So it was definitely gutsy, but it felt from the heart the right thing to do, just to pause it. And that's okay.
Absolutely. And, I talk about this with my wife when we look at other business owners and they take a lot of time away from their young family to put into the business. And it's bringing up that balance, but your child will benefit massively from you taking that time off to actually dedicate to them rather than the Forest Foodie, because you can come back to it.
Yeah,
Obviously,
exactly.
I know you would have had those worries about someone maybe another business opening up and taking your customers away, but because we can't always think rationally, but we put at time that, but that's far more beneficial what you did. And again, I think it's really important for anyone listening who might be starting a family but running a business to take that time, your family.
Definitely.
So
I think take that time, but also to, I think there's a lot of business owners who are worried about that, but they also think they can never have a break. They can never go on holiday. They can never go to a wedding because it's on Saturday, or whatever it might be. I think trying to just constantly think, why am I doing this? What's the reason that I started my own business? Because if it was all, this might not be the case for every business, of course, but if it was all about, the money and the benefits and the holiday allowance and things like that, and then you go and work for a big corporation and you'd get all that and you'd work 9 to 5 and that'd be it. But it's actually, why do we do this and what's important? And yeah, take a break, take a holiday, have some time out, and make it work for you and get out of it what you need to get out of it.
definitely.
Which shouldn't be, it's not working every hour of the day, 7 days a week.
Absolutely. So, Flora, looking ahead then for the rest of 2025, what's in store for you and your business?
So the rest of this year is continuing what we do and doing it to a very high standard. I think we've got to really happy with sort of where we're up to. We are pretty much full currently till the middle of August, and then we with yacht charters and holiday makers, August and September all are super busy. Then we plan again for the Christmas season, which again in a month is probably your busiest time of the year as well. So yeah, it's continuing to support our suppliers, support our producers, and also the corporates for events and things like that. We've started to get Christmas bookings for charity fundraisers and corporate networking, Christmas parties already. So yeah, nothing sort of nothing particularly new, if that makes sense, but yeah, carrying on doing what we're doing and enjoying it.
This is what more could you ask? Keeping busy and doing what you love. That's fantastic. So, Flora, before I let you go, if anyone looking to find you, where do they need to go?
So our website is theforestfoodie.com. We post a lot on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll deliver locally from Lymington, or we have a unit which is behind the New Forest car wash on the Milford Road. It's an old dairy, And we are a first floor unit there where we've got our commercial kitchen and the warehouse unit. But it's not open like a shop, if that makes sense. But that's where we do all of our cooking, all of our prepping, etc. Or you'll see me out and about with suppliers on the high street, down at the Leamington Yacht Haven or Berthon, most mornings from Thursday to Sunday around 8 a.m. It's a pretty glorious time of the day there. So, yeah, you'll probably see us around and about.
Amazing. Flora, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.